Welcome to the 5-Minute Mysteries podcast from 5minutemysteries.com, where every week we take a look at a mysterious disappearance, object, place, or other mystery in about 5 minutes. Episode 6, The Mystery of the Princes in the Tower. The Mystery of the Princes in the Tower is one of the most enduring and controversial episodes in English history. The disappearance of the two young sons of King Edward IV, Edward V, and Richard, Duke of York, from the Tower of London in 1483 has intrigued historians for centuries. Their fate remains unknown, shrouded in speculation and mystery, with their story entangled in the complex and bloody power struggles of the Wars of the Roses. Edward V was born in 1470, the eldest son of King Edward IV and Queen Elizabeth Woodville. His birth secured the Yorkist line at a time when the struggle between the houses of York and Lancaster was tearing England apart. Richard, Duke of York, followed in 1473, further strengthening the Yorkist claim to the throne. The brothers' early years were marked by the relative stability of their father's reign, but this stability was soon to be shattered. In April 1483, King Edward IV died unexpectedly, leaving his 12-year-old son, Edward, as his heir. Edward was in Ludlow at the time, preparing to assume his role as king. Upon his father's death, he set out for London to be crowned, under the protection of his maternal uncle, Anthony Woodville, Earl Rivers. However, their journey was interrupted by Edward's paternal uncle, Richard, Duke of Gloucester, who would later become Richard III. Gloucester intercepted the party, arrested Rivers and other key members of the Woodville faction, and took control of the young king. Richard escorted Edward to the Tower of London, then a royal residence, ostensibly to prepare for his coronation. Meanwhile, Richard acted swiftly to consolidate power. He secured the support of other noblemen and declared himself Lord Protector, a position that gave him control over the kingdom until Edward reached adulthood. Shortly after, Richard had Edward's younger brother Richard, Duke of York, brought to the Tower to join him. The events that followed remain the subject of intense debate. On the 22nd of June 1483, a sermon was preached in London claiming that Edward IV's marriage to Elizabeth Woodville had been invalid because he had been pre-contracted to another woman. This declaration made Edward V and his brother illegitimate and ineligible for the throne. Just days later, on the 26th of June, Richard accepted an invitation from a group of nobles to assume the crown himself, becoming Richard III. The princes were last seen in public shortly after this, and by the autumn of 1483, they had disappeared. The fate of the princes has been a subject of speculation and controversy ever since. The most widely accepted theory is that they were murdered on Richard III's orders to eliminate any rival claims to the throne. This view was popularized by Sir Thomas More in his History of King Richard III, written in the early 16th century, and later by William Shakespeare in his play Richard III. According to More, the princes were smothered in their sleep by agents of Richard, their bodies buried under a staircase in the tower. Shakespeare's portrayal of Richard III as a deformed villain, driven by ambition and malice, cemented this interpretation in the public imagination. However, the evidence against Richard III is largely circumstantial. His accession to the throne undoubtedly benefited from the removal of the princes, but there is no definitive proof that he ordered their deaths. Some historians argue that Richard had no need to kill the princes, as their legitimacy had already been undermined, and that other figures, such as Henry Stafford, Duke of Buckingham, may have been responsible. Buckingham, once Richard's ally, turned against him and led a rebellion in 1483. His involvement in the disappearance of the princes is a plausible theory, but like many others, it remains unproven. Another possibility is that the princes were killed by supporters of Henry Tudor, who would later become Henry VII. After defeating Richard III at the Battle of Bosworth in 1485, Henry married Elizabeth of York, the prince's sister, to unite the warring factions. If the princes were alive, they would have posed a significant threat to Henry's claim to the throne. Thus, some suggest that Tudor agents may have been responsible for their deaths, ensuring that Henry's reign was secure. Adding to the complexity of the mystery are the various claims that at least one of the princes may have survived. In the late 15th century, several impostors appeared, most notably Perkin Warbeck, who claimed to be Richard, Duke of York. Warbeck's claim gained support in various European courts, and he led a failed attempt to invade England. However, his eventual capture and confession, widely believed to have been extracted under duress, discredited his story, and he was executed in 1499. While Warbeck's tale was ultimately dismissed, it reflects the uncertainty and intrigue surrounding the fate of the princes. The discovery of 2 small skeletons in the Tower of London in 1674 added another layer to the mystery. The bones were found buried under a staircase, in the same location described by Sir Thomas More. King Charles II ordered the remains to be placed in Westminster Abbey, where they lie to this day. In 1933, the bones were examined, and it was determined that they belonged to 2 children of about the right age to be the princes. However, the examination was inconclusive, and no further tests have been conducted. Modern forensic techniques, including DNA analysis, could potentially provide more definitive answers, but as of now, the identity of the remains remains uncertain. The mystery of the princes in the tower continues to fascinate historians and the public alike. The lack of concrete evidence and the multiple competing theories have ensured that the debate over their fate remains active. Richard III's reputation, revived in part by the discovery of his remains in Leicester in 2012, has been re-examined, with some historians arguing that he has been unfairly vilified. Others maintain that Richard had both the motive and the opportunity to order the deaths of his nephews. The enduring fascination with the princes in the tower lies not only in the mystery itself, but in the broader context of the turbulent times in which they lived. The Wars of the Roses were marked by betrayal, shifting allegiances, and a ruthless struggle for power. The story of the princes encapsulates the tragedy of innocence, caught in the crossfire of political ambition, and the lengths to which those in power will go to secure their position. Whether the truth of their fate will ever be known remains uncertain. The mystery of the princes in the tower is a poignant reminder of the darker side of history, where power and survival often outweighed morality and justice. It is a tale that has captivated the imagination for over 5 centuries and will likely continue to do so for many more. I hope you enjoyed that episode of the 5-Minute Mysteries podcast from 5minutemysteries.com. If you get a chance, please leave a review wherever you get your podcasts, as it will help us to grow. Also, why not check out our other 5-minute podcasts, 5-Minute Biographies, 5-Minute History, and 5-Minute Murder. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next week.